Okay friends, it's time to get started on replacing our transmission mount. That's going to be located directly underneath the rear of the transmission above your cross member. Before we can continue on by taking out this cross member to gain access, you need to put something underneath the transmission pan to support the transmission. You want to be very careful not to damage the transmission pan, crush it in, or poke a hole. Get a little bit of pressure under there. Underneath the cross member, you're going to find two 19mm headed nuts. Go ahead and remove the pair. Inspect your mounting hardware as you remove it. If anything needs to be replaced, it's a perfect time to replace it. Now let's continue on to our four 13mm headed bolts that hold the cross member to the frame. To remove each of these, we'll use a 13mm here and a 15mm to hold the nut along the top. The next thing we're going to do is move along to our cross bolts here. Now this 15mm headed bolt goes straight through from the rear all the way across to the front. On the front, there's an 18mm headed nut. Let's go ahead and remove that nut. I'm going to leave each of the bolts in while they're still loose, and then we can continue removing this. We'll leave that in there. Now let's go ahead and grab onto this. We're just going to wiggle it around a little bit and try to remove each of our mounting bolts. In the center of this area, there's going to be a spacer. Let's go ahead and carefully pry that out of there. Now as you start pulling this out, keep in mind there's nothing holding this in. If you wanted to, you can continue by putting on one of your mounting nuts up here just to kind of hold it in place while you continue. Keep that nice and loose. Now let's continue on with our pry bar. We're going to carefully get in between the cross member and the frame and gently start prying it. We'll give this a quick inspection. Now we can start dismounting this. On the passenger side, as you remove this bolt, you're going to find that you have the bracket for your exhaust. Go ahead and grab that bracket, spin it out of your way. Let's grab onto the mount itself, remove our last bolt. There it is, friends. Before we continue with our installation, let's go ahead and start cleaning up the area first. Let's use a wire brush, try to get off any of the large particles that are in the area. We want to try to make sure these are a smooth surface. That's good enough. Continue with that brush, and we're going to move along to each side of the frame where our cross member goes. Let's go ahead and line up our two mounting holes. I'm going to take my bolt after I clean all the threads and apply some thread locker. You can use blue or red. I'll start in the driver's side one. We'll kind of get this so it's semi-snug, and we'll continue on to the passenger side. For that one, keep in mind you have the exhaust hanger you need to put on there as well. Now we'll go ahead and bottom these out, and we'll torque each of them to 66 foot-pounds. Now we can start putting our cross member in. Keep in mind, you want to make sure you line up all of your mounting bolt holes. On either side, you have the one that goes straight on through. It also has to go through the frame. Looking at the bottom, you have your other 4 holes, 2 for each side. Everything needs to line up perfectly. Typically, you can go ahead and slide this up here, and then generally you just have to give it a couple loving bonks to make sure it's secured. Now at this point, it's starting to go up. I'm going to go ahead and start on my 2 mounting nuts here. We'll leave those loose. We'll continue driving this up, once again, making sure we're lining up the bolt holes along the way. Now the next thing I'm going to do is carefully start snugging these. Paying attention to this hole, once it lines up, we'll go ahead and slide our bolt and of course our spacer through the center. Now I'm going to continue starting to snug these. I don't need to make it super tight, I just want to try to line up the hole. At that point, I can start putting my bolt through, my spacer, slide it the rest of the way through, and start on my nut. After that, do the same on the other side. Now that we have them all started, let's go ahead and bottom these out, and then we're going to torque each of these to 66 foot-pounds as well. Now let's move along to these bolts. We'll go ahead and snug each of them and then torque them to 105 foot-pounds. Now we'll just do the same to the other one. Once you have all that torqued, continue on by removing your support. Now we can move along to the two center nuts. We'll go ahead and bottom these out, and then we're going to torque each of these to 72 foot-pounds. Okay friends, we got our transmission mount installed. Lastly, go ahead and slide out from underneath the vehicle. Start up the vehicle, run it through all the gears. Make sure you don't hear a clunking noise, like maybe you left something loose. Assuming everything's fine, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.